Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. It's an award-winning daily series from 8:30 to 9 a.m. to help small businesses. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments of the live feed. And if you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook, where accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. So during today's live session, as usual, we're going to be running a poll. So please do engage with it and we'll share the result at the end. So good morning again. My name is Helen McGillivray, and I'm very privileged to be invited back to Ask the Expert this morning to talk about mindfully approaching the tax season. I guess this is very relevant for us all just now, us in small businesses. It comes every year, but we're always completely baffled and surprised by it. So a little bit about me. I'm a psychological therapist. I started out my career in nursing many years ago, and I worked as a nurse in the NHS for a lot of years, and then I converted to mental health nursing, and I progressed into a career in psychology. So I no longer work in the NHS. I left and started up my own small business called Compass Therapy in about 2014, and that was a leap into the unknown, having worked under the protection of the NHS for many years and then moving into starting my own small business. So that's something that perhaps a few of us have in common, that leaping into the unknown. So when we talk about psychological therapy, we're talking about evidence-based psychological frameworks to treat people with things like depression, anxiety. Anxiety can include OCD. I work a lot with trauma, and just a wide range of psychological difficulties that people might present with. So I offer therapy to individuals, mainly adults, and I also provide workshops to workplaces. And also in the past couple of years during lockdown, I became involved in a business startup, which is developing a fantastic mental health app, which it's now launched. You can actually download it from our website, and it's called OK Positive. And the app has different features on it, like mood tracking and some psychological resources and other bits and bobs. So feel free to have a look at that. So I am here today, as I said, to talk about mindfully approaching the tax season. And like everything else in my life, I use the psychological principles that I teach to live my own life. So I use cognitive behavioural therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. And as I've said, these are evidence-based practices that can have they certainly help me change my life when they change how I work with people. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of insight today. So get your questions in early, or feel free to share any comments or tips about how you mindfully approach the tax season. So it comes every year. Why are we surprised? And what are your barriers to completing your tax return? You know, what are we all have our own things, but I'd be interested to know what yours are. And it might be helpful maybe just to jot this down. I know you might have answered in the poll, but just to see if anything changes by the time we come to the end of this little question and answer session here this morning. So just jotting down your barriers to completing the tax return. So people often leave their self-assessment to the last minute. I know I do. And I know it causes a build-up of stress, panic, anxiety. And the week before, we're running around trying to find receipts and looking for all the information that we need to have now for our accountant or whoever helps us with our books. It's a horrible thing to do. It's a really laborious thing to do, and it's natural. We humans do not like things that are difficult. We always like the path of least resistance. So it's really natural to try and to want to avoid it. But we know, and a lot of my work that I do with people is about avoidance. The things we avoid only just create more problems in the long run. So it's exactly the same with your tax return. I'm no expert in tax returns, so hopefully I'm not going to get any questions on that today. My expertise is in the psychological approach that we're going to be talking about. So this year, I think because of COVID, there has been an extension to the deadline. However, I think it's really important that we all try and avoid the trap of delaying it and just get it done. I think it's been extended for another month, which is really helpful, but maybe use that time wisely. And channel your energy you have into getting it done, and then channel your energy into using that month to get on with the year. I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like January's got about 171 days in it. So if we could get the tax return done, get it in, then we can enjoy February and the lighter days and the new year that's ahead of us with less restrictions. So if we're being mindful, people talk about mindfulness like I need to empty my mind, I need to get rid of thoughts. That's really not my understanding of mindfulness. If we're being mindful, we are paying attention to ourselves and the world around us in a more particular way. Being mindful is just paying attention on purpose to ourselves and to the way we react and respond to the world round about us. So the way we react and respond when someone says, have you done your tax return? Just noticing how we think, how we feel, what we do. So I'm just going to talk through my experience of that in a moment. Being mindful doesn't mean we shouldn't have thoughts. Being mindful doesn't mean we have to be positive and happy about it all the time. Being mindful is just about noticing. So when we are aware of our thinking, we can almost have a conversation back with it. It's not about replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts or not having thoughts. It's just about noticing what thoughts we're having. So when it comes to your tax return, what narrative is running through your mind about it? As I knew I was coming on to this Ask the Expert today, I had been jotting down some of my thinking over the past couple of weeks or maybe longer. When I think about, there's normally a process that happens with me that someone will say, have you done your self-assessment? And I think, oh shit, I've not done it. And then I've become quite frantic. So some of the thoughts that I've noticed that I was having were, oh no, it's not that time of year again. Oh no, I don't have money. I've spent too much at Christmas time. I've written them down. That's why I'm looking down here. My accountant's going to think I'm a pain in the backside, or she'll think I'm stupid. And Helen, you should know better. This comes every year. What an idiot. Why are you doing this to yourself again? So that's a little snapshot into my thinking. It's not particularly helpful, but it's there. But I guess when I was thinking about doing this, I thought there might be different ways to think about the tax return. What would happen if we didn't pay our taxes? What would happen to health, education, social services, pensions? So maybe trying to think about, well, it just needs to be done. It's not such a big deal. It's okay, Helen, you've got this. When I think like that, I don't have such an emotional response. So this is talking about watching your thinking. What narrative are you running to? So I've given you a little insight into mine. And then thinking about why we pay our taxes, why it's important. Thinking about other things in life that, sometimes if things feel completely overwhelming and a pain, it's natural to want to avoid it. So just being aware of that. And then notice our emotions. So as I'm going along, I shared with you my narrative in my mind where I'm telling myself all sorts of things like I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, I'm all these things for not doing my tax return. Doesn't make me feel very good about myself. So when I'm paying attention, when I'm being mindful, I notice the discomfort. I notice that it feels quite unpleasant to have these thoughts. I notice that I'm giving myself a hard time. I notice that I feel stressed. But I use that information to help guide my actions. So when I noticed all of this, I then thought, okay, this is happening again. I'm going to take some action. So there were steps I took. I went on to QuickBooks. Thank goodness for QuickBooks. It's such a helpful thing. I read some things. I slowly calculated my mileage, and I gave the information to the people I needed to give it to. And then immediately my emotions started to change. It felt a bit more manageable, breaking it down into small steps and just getting it done and just noticing how you feel. But also being aware that when emotion is high, we're not really able to think clearly. If your emotion's high, if there's threat going on, our body goes into fight or flight. And before we know it, we're reacting, we're fighting, we're stressed, we're doing all of these things. So if we notice it early, we can take action. So, and also be aware of the behaviour. So when we are stressed and anxious, we behave in a completely different way. So mindfulness is not about not having any of these things. It's about making space for it. It's about acknowledging feelings. It's about noticing the dialogue that you're having in your head, and really just checking in with that. And a way to be more mindful is just really maybe to set aside a short space of time each day, maybe to use an app or to go online, or even just to sit and mindfully have a cup of tea and just notice your thinking. Just be aware of it. So I thought I would share with you a quote today by Abraham Maslow. So in any given moment, we have two options. So when we face our tax return, we have two options. We can either step forward and grow, or we can step back into safety. So by stepping forward in our tax return, taking action, contacting people who might help us, we can move forward and our business can grow. Or we can give ourselves a hard time and beat ourselves up for not doing it. And I guess then we're going to step back into safety where we're going to avoid again. And this is what keeps problems going. And I guess this is the bread and butter of the work I do with people. So I thought I'd finish off today with a brief acronym. So we could all do with some focus when we are doing our tax return. So the acronym, the word is focus. So here are my tips for mindfully approaching the tax season. So the focus, so flow, so create some space and find your flow so you can get productive. I think if we're constantly having our emails pinging in, our phones pinging all the time, and we're kind of trying to do it in between our busy working day, we're not going to get into that flow space that our mind needs to be creative and to process things properly. So create some space in your day and find your flow. So the O is for open up. So open up to the experience. The tax return is happening, it needs to be done. The self-assessment needs to be completed. So just be aware of the narratives that come with that in your mind, be aware of how it makes you feel, and try just accept it. You've got this, you've done it every year. It's okay to feel stressed, but the reason you feel stressed is just because it's a bit overwhelming. Break it down into small sections. So committed action is the C in focus. So set aside some time, maybe do some journaling, maybe breaking down the tasks into tiny little baby steps, but keep moving forward and ticking those tasks. Just commit to doing the task. So the U in focus is for unplug. So just unplug from your world for a day or a couple of days, however long it takes. Maybe it will only take a couple of hours, but set aside some time, change plans, move meetings, unplug from your devices. Maybe try not being on your phone first thing in the morning so you can just get up and focus and just get it done, and mute all notifications or go onto airplane mode for a while. And that should help. And the S in focus is for stress points. So know and better understand your stress points and try and be compassionate towards them. It's okay to find this stressful, but example might be if you really struggle with some aspects of your tax return, maybe ask for help or speak to somebody about it or speak to the tax office. People will help you. So know your stress points and stick by them. So coming back to, you wrote down your barriers to the tax return. I just wonder if that's changed at all, or is there anything you might do differently? And now we're going to move on to some questions from you all. I'm looking forward to these. Doesn't need to be questions. If you have any points or you want to share some tips, we would love to hear those. It's a great community of small business owners here who probably have lots of expertise between us. So moving on to the questions. So the first question has come in from Chantel on Instagram. It's a DM. So sometimes when colleagues talk to me, I find it hard to concentrate and I don't understand what they're saying. Since I've got back to work from the Christmas break, it's been hard to block out the chattering in my mind. How do I regain my ability to concentrate? Chantel, this sounds like a really good and important question. When we find it hard to concentrate, I'm wondering if you're experiencing a bit of stress or anxiety. Often, if our body is in fight or flight, we find it difficult to focus on anything properly. So your concentration could be because you're feeling stressed or anxious. I wonder if you were to pay attention to your body, what does it feel like? You know, what are you frightened of? Maybe trying to be aware of, because if you're finding it hard to concentrate, what are the potential threats, perceived threats in your mind? What do you worry might happen? I think it's also, I would encourage you to maybe speak to your colleagues about it if you're feeling that way. Because sometimes if you can't concentrate and you're missing information, that can then make the situation worse, because then you might worry that you're missing something, or you might not be taking in the information that you're being given. A good way to regain your ability to concentrate is maybe just to, you could try maybe introducing mindfulness into your day. You could, you know, when you get into the office, when we're being mindful, we don't need to be lying on the floor in a meditative state. We could just be pausing, slowing down a little bit, just noticing our body and our thinking. Something I do, Chantel, when I feel a bit stressed and anxious, because I can sometimes get that too, is I kind of ground myself in the moment. And I'm doing it now. I'm kind of pushing my feet into the ground and kind of making sure my shoulders are down, and you know, I slow down my breathing and just try and be present in the moment. So really focusing on your breath and focusing on slowing down your breath. Maybe feeling the breath coming in through your nostrils. Maybe you could try this at the moment. But just slowing down. There is no hurry. And if you don't understand or you're not taking something in, just ask the question. I think it's been hard for a lot of people going back to work and trying to re-engage the way we normally did. So be compassionate to yourself as well. And if it persists, maybe speak to somebody about it. But you could look up, you know, maybe use some of the apps that are there, not only OK Positive, but there's other ones out there. So thank you for your question. So Ollie on Twitter, a DM. So part of the problem for me is that I'm not good with numbers. So if I start to find something overwhelming, I just shut down. What can I do to stop that from happening? Ollie, I'm with you here. I have always said this about myself, and I've now created this story in my mind that if I see a number, I go blank. So this is something that I can really empathise with. What I would maybe suggest to you, Ollie, again, is just noticing when you're getting into that spiral and just trying to come back and take smaller steps, and maybe just thinking about, again, when I mentioned the focus acronym, so stress, know your stress points. If your stress point is the numbers, then is there any way you can ask for help? Or is it possible to get a bookkeeper maybe to check over your accounts, or just finding ways? Maybe trying to get more confident in dealing with numbers. I know I did a couple of courses via QuickBooks online that I found very helpful. But yeah, I think it sounds like you're very stuck on this narrative that you're no good with numbers. Is it true? Is that always been the case? Just be aware of how strong that narrative is in your mind, and maybe question it a little bit, and notice when you feel overwhelmed. When we feel overwhelmed, we're in fight or flight, and then we're not able to really do things effectively. So try and notice the feelings, notice the behaviour, be a bit more mindful if you can. Sounds, I don't mean to minimise it, but it is a problem that a lot of people do have. So just speak to people, get help is another thing you can do. So thanks, Ollie. And I empathise with you. So the next question, Habby on Facebook Messenger. I feel society has returned to a sense of normality sooner than I have. That really mundane things are now uncomfortable. For example, going on public transport or visiting shopping centres. I know I need to normalise these things again, especially with restrictions easing. How do I overcome this? Javi, thank you so much for sharing this question with us. And I want to say I'm sure you're not alone. I think this is a problem that many, many people face. And it's something where I think if we notice how we think about this, it might be that you're feeling society's telling you this, but it might also be that your mind is saying things like, you need to be back to normal, you need to be doing all these things, but you're noticing that you're not ready for it. So are there small changes you could make in your day to perhaps slow this down a bit, or any tweaks you can make to make it a bit more pleasant? I don't know what your situation is, or if you live in a city, it sounds like maybe you do. Is public transport something that you have to do? Could you take a different course of action and maybe cycle or walk any places? I think be aware of where this pressure is coming from. Is it from society? Is it from your workplace? If it's making you feel really anxious, I would really encourage you to speak with your team, with your manager, if you have a team, and just take your time. I think something that's really important here is, we're all treading in the unknown. The virus is still pretty much in circulation. Things are not the same. So in every day, we have this kind of constant threat of all of this still around about us, and our bodies and minds will react to all of that. So pay attention to what's going on outside in the world, but also pay attention to what's going on in your thinking, in your emotional response, and in your behaviours. And do what's right for you. Treat yourself with compassion and care. And that sounds like it's an easy thing to do. It's really not. We're not the most compassionate to ourselves at times. So try practicing some of that. I guess that would be a whole different Ask the Expert, speaking about self-compassion, but hopefully I've given you a little bit of advice there. So thank you for sharing that. So the next question, Malika on Instagram DM. I've experienced flow before when I'm doing something creative or fun, but I don't always get it when I do tasks I don't enjoy. How do we foster a sense of flow so we can apply it in our day-to-day job? I guess, Malika, if we knew how to do this exactly, we could solve a $1 million problem. It's so much easier. We're all human beings, and we all prefer things that give us pleasure. That's just the way it is. So when things give us pleasure, it's very easy to get into the moment and to go and be creative. But when it comes to daily tasks or work, I guess it's not as easy. But it's great that you notice this, and it's great that you want to do it. What I would suggest is that mindfulness, be more mindful, and again, noticing how you feel about particular tasks or how you're thinking about it might be a starting point. But I guess it's about having strategies, having plans, maybe creating space in your day, controlling your own diary, trying to maybe do things you enjoy least at the beginning of the day, or whatever. I mean, sometimes people are better in the morning, sometimes people are better in the afternoons. Just understanding yourself more and what you need to get through your day. And I suppose some of the principles that I use in my daily life are about, rather than making decisions about my day on the way I think about it, I make decisions on my day about, based on how I want to show up, how I want to present myself. So when tasks are difficult, what's important to me to get that done? What do I need? How can I be kind to myself? Thinking about the end of the day, if you get these tasks done, you're going to enjoy yourself better at the end of the day. And again, I think something that we all struggle with now in our modern world is all the distractions that come. So, turning off your mobile phone, or turning off your notifications, or using some of the applications on, the email software that allows you to apply focus and not be disturbed. Just really thinking about why it's important to apply flow in the workplace, and just practice doing it. If you notice you're getting distracted, just try and come back into the moment. If you're noticing that you're putting things off, just try and be compassionate with yourself, and try and get the tasks done. I would like to hear if anyone else has any information on how to apply this, because I think you can make a lot of money if you figured this one out. So thanks for sharing that, Malika, that's really helpful. So a comment from Kim on Facebook about tax returns. I constantly forget to renew the bank feed and end up having to import. Sorry, I'll read that again. I constantly forget to renew the bank feed and end up having to import statements, making life so much harder. That's a fair comment. So I guess now that you notice you're doing that, is there anything you can do differently? I suppose these things are there on Facebook on QuickBooks to help us. But yeah, it's difficult. We're never going to get it completely right. And Terry on Twitter DM, I'm all for unplugging, but doing a tax return these days tends to include computers or apps. How do we get it done while not getting distracted? I guess that's where you have to figure out how to put on the do not disturb features. I guess for me, I tend to keep my phone out of the room and try and turn my do not disturb on. And yeah, it's hard. It's like a battle of wills when you hear distractions going on all the time, but maybe it's something we all need to practice and we all need to be more mindful with. So thank you so much for your questions. As usual, they were really good and fun. And also, there's some serious stuff out there about us looking after ourselves and trying to pay attention to how we're feeling. And asking for help is something I'm thinking was there too. So the poll results are in. We asked you, what is your biggest barrier when completing your tax return? So 50% said lack of time, 0% said lack of understanding. That's great. 50% said stress, and 0 answered fear. So stress and lack of time. So I would say on the back of that, then create more time and be aware of our stress points. And maybe the poll figures would be different next year if we were to come back. So thanks all very much for tuning in today. And if you want to get in contact with me or have a look at the app that I mentioned, you can contact me at info@okpositive.org. So coming up tomorrow on Ask the Expert is Eriona She is an accountant and managing director of Majors Accounts, and she'll be happy to answer your questions. So tune in to learn all about the latest COVID relief grants for your business that you might be able to apply for. And a reminder that if you need any more advice, join the official QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook, where accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. I've really enjoyed answering your questions today. Have a great day. Thank you.